Welcome to our community conversations on discovering McCall and the West Central Mountains. I'm Dr. Bryan Williams, president of McCall College, and I'll serve as the moderator for this series. McCall College is a local, specialized college offering meaningful education to students of all ages. The motto of this series is Local Voices Addressing Local Issues. Many people are arriving in our region, and the challenge for so many of them is how to orient well to a rural area in Idaho. It's difficult for many people. This series seeks to help newcomers succeed in discovering McCall and our region. Local voices will seek to offer crucial advice in the discovery process. Existing residents, hopefully, will also discover local features that they may have missed. It's a joy now as we enter into our second week of what looks like about 6 conversations, and it's a joy to welcome Chief Garrett de Jong. He's our McCall Fire Chief. And the title that we've sort of working with is Succeeding at Fire Protection. And we welcome you tonight to our community conversations. Thank you and welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Would you take a moment, introduce yourself, your family, and why you enjoy living in McCall?
You bet. My name is Garrett de Jong. I'm the fire chief in McCall. I've been working for the McCall Fire District for 18 years now and in Valley County for 20. I am married to my high school sweetheart. We will be celebrating 20 years this year. We have 4 kids, age 15, 11, 7, and 3.
Oh my. Good for you.
Yeah.
And why do you enjoy living in McCall?
I am born and raised in McCall.
Seriously, you are a serious local.
Serious local McCall Donnelly graduate. Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah, I moved away for a couple of years for college and then got fortunate enough to get back here and get a job opportunity in the field that I love.
So what makes life living for you here? Is there, you enjoy your job? Does that make it? Or is there other things that are seriously part of good living here in McCall?
Yeah, I think growing up here, I think every kid that grows up in McCall can't wait to get out of McCall.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get out of McCall and you realize McCall's pretty great. You do everything you can to get back. I grew up skiing, kayaking, and fishing and hunting and doing all the things that we do in McCall and we like to do. Yeah, I love the beauty in McCall and the quietness most of the year.
And then we just hope our kids get the same bug and come back too someday.
For sure.
Tell us about your role in McCall here and what that means for the West Central Mountain region.
Yeah, I'm the fire chief in McCall. And of the McCall Fire District. The fire district is a special district in Idaho. So in 1996, the city of McCall and the rural fire district consolidated into the McCall Fire District. So we're governed by 3 elected commissioners. We are not a city department, and we collect, levy taxes from property in the McCall Fire District that goes to our operating budget.
There's the first thing I learned. Your bosses are the county commissioners.
No, they're not county commissioners. They're fire district commissioners.
So tell me about those people. Are they elected?
They're elected.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so those are the people you report to.
Yes. Basically, the fire district is subdivided into 3 sub-districts, 1, 2, and 3, similar to the county sub-districts, right? And then each commissioner lives in each sub-district and represents that sub-district on the commission.
And how often do they meet?
They meet once a month, regular meetings, and then there's special meetings that occur throughout the year.
And so when you've got an issue, those are the folks that you refer to.
Yes, those.
Okay. So you don't want to buy a new truck, you want something to happen in the district. Those are the folks that make the decision
with you, setting your budget, those kinds of
Exactly.
things. Okay,
Yep.
so there's the first point of learning.
Yeah, but we still obviously we work with the city very closely.
So if I looked at the ballot that's coming up for people, will they see a fire district commissioner on the ballot?
No, there's no seats that are up this year.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Each commissioner serves a 4-year term, and they alternate. So I believe 1 year, two of those seats are open, and then another on the odd year.
So this year, we won't see that on the ballot.
No.
Excellent. Well, there we go. What's the most important issue concerning newcomers that you would like to address?
Probably that McCall is just different. The culture of McCall is pretty small townish in Idaho, and it's really community oriented. And I think the normal mindset in McCall of people is pretty agrarian. They put their interests in the outdoors first and foremost versus even working. Sometimes and I laugh about it. People will call and say they have a hard time getting a sub, and it's in September for a plumber or a framer or any kind of job like that. And in McCall that time of year, it's archery season, and typically there's a lot of those people take time off to go hunt for a couple weeks. So it can be a hard time to get service work, and that's just the difference in McCall. There's a lot of people that their worldview is just a little different. They work to live, not live to work, and I think that's just a different culture than a lot of people are accustomed out of the area.
Well, it's going to take a new mindset because, again, we don't have an awful lot of services, and people can get themselves stuck in some odd situations. What mindset would you encourage newcomers to have?
Mainly self-sufficiency. I think in McCall, and it doesn't matter if it's winter or summer, McCall is remote. I think we think of ourselves as rural, and I sit on a couple different planning boards and committees, and even when we talk about communications systems at a federal level for radio communications and cell phone communications, the federal government doesn't even qualify Valley County as rural. We're classified frontier.
Oh, no.
Because we're so far away from an interstate. And if you really look at populations across the United States, we're over 100 miles from an interstate and a Walmart. For most people and most populations, that's way out of town, right?
Well, I hadn't heard the term frontier applied.
Frontier, yeah, I hadn't either. I always think of like Alaska, but certainly McCall fits the bill for that kind of.
And so that demands self-sufficiency. Can you think of a couple stories of lack of self-sufficiency that might illustrate this?
For sure. I think most people that are familiar with the area know we have one canyon on each side of us that get rock slides. I believe it was in 1996 we had severe flooding in the spring, and both canyons slid shut for about a week before they got them open. And so it was imperative that people had, enough supplies in their home to last for the week. Groceries, fuel, wood, all that kind of stuff that we need. In the winter, it can be even more drastic because we can get crazy weather patterns where we get a lot of snow or we get high winds with snow, which is worse because roads can drift shut almost instantly. And we've had plenty of instances where cars are driving down the road, they get stuck in a snowdrift, and within 15 minutes, the winds pick up, and all the cars that are on that road get kind of blocked in. And so having four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive vehicles, having winter tires on those vehicles, carrying a shovel, even carrying a blanket and water and stuff to kind of camp out in your car if you need to for a while, because it can be really resource intensive and take time to get people out to help in those situations. The county plows, I think, 400 or 500 miles of roads in Valley County in the winter. And so in those kind of situations, it can be difficult to get resources to help people.
But that could literally mean just an average trip to McCall from someone who's out in one of our more rural settings, 5-7 miles out. You need to be prepared for that. This isn't a road trip where you're out somewhere on an interstate where you might get trapped. You can get trapped on the average visit to McCall in our region.
Oh yeah, I just live a couple miles out of town, out towards Carefree Subdivision, and this winter, it was right around New Year's, we had some significant snowfall, and the winds picked up, and I want to say 6 to 7 vehicles got kind of stranded on Pearson Lane, and most of those people were just running to the grocery store, running to pick their kids up from a school activity and run home, and it went from bad to worse really fast. And so, me and a couple of my neighbors just grabbed snow blowers and shovels and went out and opened up the road enough to get them out. Otherwise, it would have taken probably hours to get a plow truck in there because we were dealing with issues like that countywide.
Self-sufficiency. I don't know if we can say that often enough in our conversation. They have got to be self-sufficient if they come to live in McCall. And that's such a crucial term that I think we'll try and bring up often. As you walk around town, I'm sure our newcomers sense some of those ball caps that say, I'm an Idaho native, or if you're from, you name your state, please go home, or t-shirts that identify or are sometimes quite rude to our newcomers. Our locals seem to have an issue with newcomers. What causes that friction between the locals and the newcomers?
To me, it's the old adage that one bad apple can spoil the bunch, right? You get a local that talks negatively to a tourist because they have out-of-state plates, or vice versa, and then that kind of just becomes the behavior. One of my mentors always told me that the only thing constant is change, and I think one of the hard things to wrap your head around is that change is constant, and it's going to be constant in McCall. We can't go back and rewind the clock and just stop time. McCall is going to change. I'd say I started to get a little bit of a bad attitude a couple of years ago, and then me and my family went on a road trip to California and hit Disneyland and did all that, and I didn't realize how many people there are that aren't here. I think McCall's busy, and then I go travel through California and even Utah and Salt Lake City and come here, and I'm like, I don't blame these people for wanting to come here or move here. I would be doing the same thing just because of the beauty and the culture of McCall. It's community oriented. People wave at each other, and I think it's up to locals to continue that tradition by waving at people on the road and people that are walking down the road. We quit waving at each other because we think the other person's different than us and they're from out of state. We're going to lose that culture.
So it's our responsibility as those that live here to continue those friendly traditions that is very much a part of our community.
Absolutely. Welcome.
Even if the newcomers don't know those traditions and don't wave back.
Yeah.
We have to somehow keep pushing through that. Maybe they'll pick up a few of those things.
Yeah, we have plenty of people in our community that have added a lot of value to the McCall that are from out of state.
Lots of different places. What can or cannot your department do in the event of a major fire or emergency? Let's imagine there's just multi-casualty issues that are happening, and there's some seriously wounded people. What can you do and what can't you do?
So our fire district staffs four people typically, and they're cross-trained firefighter, paramedics, or firefighter EMT. And essentially what that means is they cross-staff an engine and an ambulance for the most part. So typically about 60 62% of our call volume is EMS, where we respond in ambulance and transport people to the hospital. The rest of the calls are typically fire calls. We also do backcountry rescue, calls on the lake, and wildland fire stuff. And so those are the different rigs that we can be staffing is an engine, a pumper tender, a brush truck, snowmobiles, or a boat. And so we use those 4 people interchangeably based on what type of call it is. We're really good at handling a 1-person medical call or a 1-person trauma call and small fires with that staff size. We will call in our part-time volunteers that we have, and we can call in staff from off duty. When I explain that McCall is remote to people, it's really remote. If you work for a fire department in the Treasure Valley in Boise, you can get Meridian, Nampa, Kuna, Eagle, Star to come help and assist. If in McCall we call for aid, we get an engine from Donley with 2 people, or we get an ambulance from Donley with 2 people. If we really get out of hand, we can get an ambulance or an engine from Cascade, which takes 40 or 45 minutes to get up here. And so we just don't have the resources in stock to transport a lot of people or deal with a really big fire event. Typically for us, we have 2 ambulances at the McCall Fire Station, and each ambulance can handle a patient. So anything beyond 2 patients is at the same time as a big deal.
Now, you've gotten a new fire truck recently. So
We did.
what does it do to help this situation of the equipment here in McCall?
Yeah, we bought a new engine and put it into service last year. It replaced a 1994 Pierce engine, which was our newest engine in the fleet. The new engine that we purchased is all-wheel drive. It's our first all-wheel drive fire engine that we've had in the district, and it carries 1,000 gallons of water, which is a lot of water for a pumper. Our previous engine carried 250 gallons of water, or I'm sorry, 750 gallons of water, 250 gallons less, which makes a big difference when we're fighting fire, because a lot of our district doesn't have fire hydrants. We have fire hydrants in the city of McCall and in a couple of our outlying subdivisions, but the bulk of the rural area of our fire district does not have fire hydrants. So if we respond to a fire in the rural with that engine, we have 1,000 gallons of water that needs to last us until we get a pumper tender on scene that's staffed with our volunteers, or we wait for Donley to get on scene with their pumper tender. We do have an automatic aid agreement with Donley, so in the event that we have a structure fire or a wildfire that's threatening structures, Donley will automatically respond when we're dispatched, and vice versa. We do the same thing for Donley. Still, it takes, I want to say it's like 24, 25 minutes on average to get that apparatus on scene. So every gallon of water we have in our tank is valuable to us. So yeah, having 1,000 gallons of water and having all-wheel drive really helped our capabilities.
Speaking of fire hydrants, there's a particular issue in the winter with fire hydrants. Speak to that the locals, as much as the newcomers, need to help you with.
Yeah, fire hydrants get buried pretty quickly in the winter. Because of snow removal, the plows push snow into the ditches, right, and it gets high, and then just the snowfall buries them. We have most of our fire hydrants are on risers, so you'll see a 5-foot tall fire hydrant, which is different than you see in other areas, and that's to help accommodate that snow load that we get. I believe there's 755 fire hydrants in the city limits. A lot of fire hydrants. It's imperative that people help keep fire hydrants shoveled out, and that's our big ask to the public, is to help keep those fire hydrants in front of your house shoveled out. We just do not have the staff in our fire department or in the city of McCall to keep up with removing snow, especially when we get it like a foot a day for a week. Yeah, it's just,
If it's not shoveled out, what's going to happen?
well, what's going to happen is we're going to shovel it out. We know where the hydrants are. We mark most of them with sticks. We also have GPS maps in our rigs with locations of all the fire hydrants. All of our apparatus carries no shovel, and all of our guys and gals are very accustomed to shoveling snow. Even our police department has helped on multiple occasions shovel out fire hydrant.
But it's going to slow down your response if they
It
have to
slows
get
down
to
our
that.
response. It does, but that's one of the reasons we went with 1,000-gallon pumper over 750 was to help buy us time, and it helps in those instances, us time or pumper operator time to get that connect.
And the reality of snow is do it quickly or it turns to ice, and it's a horrible problem.
Amen.
So if you can do it as quickly as the snow falls, you will give yourself a gift
Yes.
in a lot of ways. So there's a wonderful piece of advice for
Move
newcomers
snow in the morning.
and locals. Yeah, move it in the morning
Move
when
it
it's
in the
nice
morning.
and light.
You
Yeah.
wait till after work, it'll be.
Well, fire risk is ever present when we live in a forested mountain area of Idaho. Tell us what the fire department has done to minimize fire risks in our region, and what would you like to ask our newcomers to do to help?
We are involved with wildfire mitigation multiple fronts. We sit on the Valley County Fire Working Group Committee. Is made up of all the fire districts in Valley County, including Southern Idaho Timber and the Payette National Forest, the Boise National Forest. We meet quarterly, and we have different subcommittees of that fire working group. We work on legislative issues and trying to change local ordinances and state issues so that we can help the wildfire issue. We also do education and prevention work. In 2012, we started a kind of a experimental woody debris collection program. We typically would issue for the McCall Fire District, we issue burn permits for the city limits of McCall. Southern Idaho Timber is the authority having jurisdiction in the area outside of the city of McCall, and so they issue burning permits outside. Just in the city of McCall, we would average close to 200 burn permits a season in the month of May. So the burn season, or the permit season, is set by Idaho state statute, and it runs from May 10th to October 20th. And so during that time, you have to get a permit from whatever the local authority having jurisdiction is. And from May until June, we would issue about 200 burn permits. So we got a local excavating company that has container collection, and the first year they offered to put the big containers out in front of each fire station for free, and we would see if people would bring their debris to the fire station, put it in the bin, rather than haul it to the transfer center or burn it. In the first year, we decreased our burn permits by about 50%, just in the city limits of McCall. And I think we emptied the container like 20 times. It was way more than we expected. We thought we'd do it about, 3 or 4 times. That program has grown since then. The last 3 years, we've averaged 155 roll-off containers of debris.
That's wonderful.
Just from McCall. Just from McCall.
Goodness.
And we've decreased burning over the last 10 years by 76% burn permit, which has had a big impact. And it's a little bit hard to quantify the value because we don't know which of that debris would have potentially been burnt and caused an emergency. But previous to that program, we would respond quite a bit in the springtime, particularly before the grass really greens up, to brush fires and wildland fires, typically from open burning. And anymore, it's pretty rare that we're responding. So that's one program that we do. We do it county-wide. All 3 fire districts are involved. The county commissioners are very involved in helping to fund that program and to collect woody debris for free at the transfer center from May 10th to October 20th for resident waste, which has just been huge to get woody debris cleaned up from all of the cities, county, and the city of McCall also helps out significantly with funding that.
Is there any assistance for newcomers that are coming onto a property and they're looking at all these wonderful trees on their property, and yet from the perspective of fire risk, there's a lot of work to be done to protect their property from fire risk? Is there a program or something that the fire department can encourage them to
There are
realize?
programs, yeah. We have a grants program through Valley County. Residents can apply for a grant to help assist with funding of fuels mitigation work. I think at a really simple level, people can keep combustible materials away from their house, break pine needles, just do that kind of yearly seasonal maintenance that needs to be done. It goes a long way. And like that woody debris program that we participate in just helps people be more efficient with getting rid of that waste. I think we have a lot of, we have a lot of second homes in McCall where people want to come up here and enjoy their time here. It's also imperative that people spend some of that time just raking their property.
Super important. Thank you. The fire department has done a lot of work improving our residential awareness about propane. Please give us some background on why this is important and what we need to do.
So people are often familiar with natural gas that supplies fuel to homes all over the country. McCall does not have a natural gas pipeline here. We rely on propane gas, which comes in tanks, right? And each house or business is connected to a tank of propane that gets filled. Propane is different than natural gas. Natural gas is lighter than air, and when there's a natural gas leak, it typically will kind of evaporate with the light being lighter in air out of the house. Propane gas is heavier than air, so it settles. There's really no way to move propane gas in its vapor form without air or a lower elevation for the propane to go. Propane has a unique odor, and it's an odorant that they put in propane so that people can smell it because it's dangerous if there's a leak. In McCall, we have a lot of propane. Most houses have a propane tank, and most businesses have propane tanks. Our snow adds a whole another variable for propane. Snow slides off roofs, and it can break propane lines. It can break second stage regulators that come off propane systems, and it's particularly hazardous in the winter because most houses in McCall have a snow piled up all the way around them, which basically creates like a ditch around a house. And so when there's a propane leak, especially if it's in the house or on the side of the house, the propane gas will typically just go into the crawl space of the home and sit. There's nowhere for it to go. There's no ventilation in those spaces. And so without proper mitigation, that propane gas sits in vapor form. And I like to explain it like water. If you pour water into a cup, that water just sits there. You can't see propane, but if you pour it into a cup, that vapor will literally just sit at the bottom of that cup and you can pour it into another cup invisibly, and it'll move to the next cup. And so without good airflow, it just sits, and it's dangerous. From 2009 until 2019, I looked at our data, and we had run 136 propane leak calls during that time. Most of them were in the winter months from propane issues. We had 3 houses explode between 2009 and 2019. It did $2 million or $1.9 million in damage over that 10 years, and we had 2 fatalities from those incidents. In 2019, we had a significant snowfall year. We had multiple propane leaks that were at an explosive level. We can go in with our gas meters and measure the propane to oxygen ratio. And in most of those incidents, I believe there was about 10 of them in 2019, we had an explosive level of gas that was just waiting for a spark.
A hot water tank.
Hot water heater.
Yeah, anything.
Yeah. And in most of those cases, they're in vacant homes because people will smell propane and be able to call it in. And so it's typically like a neighbor smells the propane in the neighborhood, or somebody driving through and they smell it, and then they call 911 and go investigate and figure out where it's coming from. And then unfortunately, we had a tragic explosion on Fairway Drive that killed 2 people, and the cause of it was snow that had slid off the roof and had dislodged the second stage rig from this house. And so the fuel supply was a 1,000-gallon underground tank, and it just kept leaking propane through that line, and literally filled the crawl space of the home up with propane gas until it exploded. Had a spark and it exploded. So since 2019, we've formed, we call it the Valley County Propane Coalition, and we got all the fire districts, the building officials, the state HVAC inspectors, and all the propane providers around the team. And we came up with standards that would help prevent it, which included putting second stage regulators on the gable ends of homes rather than the shed sides, particularly of metal roofs. But we have had instances on comp roofs, flat roofs, of snow falling off or getting shoveled off and dislodging second stage regulators, similar to Fairway Drive incident. So the new standard is to get the second stage regulator mounted on the gable end of a home, and to use a flexible riser and put a second stage regulator cover over that second stage regulator so that snow and ice can't damage the second stage.
Have all homes been upgraded?
I wouldn't say all homes have, but we're getting really, really close.
So a newcomer would want to watch this. If you were walking your new building, look for how the regulator is positioned on the house, whether there's a little shed on top of it. Now at my home, we have this little shed that has arrived that protects the regulator, because I am on the shedding side is where mine is. So I'm very thankful.
Yeah, and the idea is to keep them maintenance free, right? If you leave for a couple weeks in the winter, or you sell your house and somebody else buys it, they just don't have to worry about it. We're trying to have them installed so that people don't have to really think about it. 'Cause most people don't even understand the propane system, and it goes from the tank to a second stage regulator into the house. And in the instances where we have a second stage regulator on the wall of the house, on the exterior, we want to make sure that it's covered so snow and it doesn't.
So important.
Fortunately, since 2019, we've had very few issues with propane, particularly regarding the second stage generator. But it's really been a community effort of all the propane companies in McCall, and all the different jurisdictions working together to help fix that problem, including Valley County Planning and Zoning, county commissioners, and all planning.
This is so important. Thank you for helping us on that particular project. Let's take you back to the EMS, the emergency services that you provide. You've got a large service area. You've got a modest-sized staff. What do newcomers need to realize about the limitations of what you can do and what our fire service comes when it comes to these call-outs that you experience?
Yeah, we contract with Valley County to provide emergency medical transport service. Historically, McCall ran a volunteer ambulance system and a volunteer fire department, right? And over the course of the years, we've hired people at the fire department to work as funding is allowed to get more people at the station so that we can provide quick response time with an ambulance in it. In 2012, we got our advanced life support license through the state of Idaho, which means we have a paramedic on duty on that ambulance, which is very helpful, especially in our rural nature. We typically try to have 2 paramedics on duty at a time that are also firefighters, so that we can staff 2 ambulances if we need to, or we can provide paramedic level service out of our fire engine if we need. We get busy. We get a lot of population swings in McCall, right? I just ran a bunch of data in the last couple of weeks for some different reports, and based on the population of Valley County, and if I'm looking at Valley County as a whole EMS system, we run 178 calls per 1,000 in population. The average in the state is 64 calls per 1,000. The other highest county was Blaine County, which is Sun Valley area, at 112 calls per 1,000 population. And just for some perspective, Boise for Ada County was at 76 calls per 1,000, which just tells us that the average population in Valley County and McCall is significantly higher than our population. What that amounts to for us is just more calls with less people responding. We look at our unit hour utilization metrics, which is just how often are we getting back-to-back calls so that we can plan eventually to staff a second ambulance in McCall. We did a study that concluded in 2020, and our UHU was at 28%, which is significant, and it means that we need to be evaluating for putting a second ambulance on, particularly during the peak times of the year for us, which is June, July, August, and typically January, and it can float into December or February depending on snow conditions, how busy the ski resorts are, how good the snowmobiling is when we'll see our call volume. Last summer in July, one of our shifts was running about a 33% overlap, meaning 33% of the time we had overlapping calls, where our ambulance crew was on a call, and then our engine crew had to jump on a second ambulance, and or myself and the deputy chief would jump on a second ambulance or an ambulance to respond.
Do we have 2 ambulances?
We have 2 ambulances in the call. Yes.
So, and are you sensing that's not enough?
Yes, I am sensing it's not enough.
So we need to go to 3 to manage the
before
overlaps.
Before 2020, we also provided interfacility transport. So we would send an ambulance from St. Luke's McCall Hospital down to the Valley to St. Luke's. The last year that we did that, we did 150 transports that year.
To Boise.
To Boise. Yeah, which take on average about 7 hours to complete. And so it took our two people of our crew away for about 7 hours. And there was days where we literally do 2 or 3 ground transports a year. We also fly about, I'd say, a person a day, a person every other day out of McCall to Boise.
Oh, goodness.
Gets flown out of here.
Okay.
And so between ground transports and air ambulances coming into McCall, I'd say once a day somebody's getting transferred out of here to Boise. It was a big burden on our staff, and it was negatively impacting our staffing model for just 911. The hospital system, the district, bought an ambulance, and Air St. Luke's, which runs a helicopter and fixed wing resources out of Boise, also staffs ground transport ambulances. So they now manage and staff an ambulance based out of St. Luke's McCall Hospital, and they do the interfacility transports from McCall to Boise.
What does the newcomer need to do when it comes to air transportation, knowing that this is happening often? This can't be cheap.
Yeah,
If you have a need that makes you need to get to Boise, what should you know?
They need to get an air ambulance membership. In McCall, we have 2 regular companies that come into McCall, Air St. Luke's and Flight Network. Both of those companies sell annual memberships for families. I think it's about $60 or $65 a year. And I believe that they overlap. So if you have Air St. Luke's and for some reason you get transported by Flight Network, they offset, right? So you don't have to buy both. Because when we call for air resources up here, we call for closest available fixed wing or helicopter. And so we're not picking Air St. Luke, Flight Network, on for the most available resource. But yeah, McCall is remote frontier. They have a critical access hospital. If somebody has a time-sensitive emergency, stroke or heart attack or traumatic injuries, they're going to Boise via helicopter or fixed wing.
And if they forget to get insurance or it lapses, what's the cost that they're going to get in a bill?
It's expensive. I know, I believe a helicopter rotor bill is at least $30,000, and I think a fixed wing is about a third of that. So yeah, it adds up.
Insurance works.
Really quick.
Thank you. What are your budget limitations? You've got a small staff, big area. What do we need to be aware of as a community and our newcomers when it comes to being safer? What are the budgetary issues that you face every day?
The budgetary issues are so we have a levy rate that is applied to improve structures only. We don't get tax dollars for property, for land. So if you own a vacant lot or you own a 3-acre parcel, the fire district doesn't get funding for the ground. It only gets funding for structures. And so our levy rate applies to the improved structure on a property. And currently I think it's about $77 per 100,000 in evaluation. Our budget is limited by the state legislature. It can only increase 3% a year operating, and then as new construction comes into our district, we get an offset of that new construction, which lowers the levy rate for everybody else. Even with new construction, our budget can only increase 8% by state statute, regardless of how much we grow or how much annexation there is into our district, which mathematically makes it impossible to save for a second station, and it delays hiring more people by 3 to 4 years per person. So it definitely limits us in what we can do without, taxpayer support to override the budget or pass bonds and do different funding. our levy rate was set in the 1980s to support a rural fire district. And it's incrementally grown since then based on new construction and the 3% growth. But it really was never intended to staff a professional department or paid staff.
Is there a pathway of change that you could imagine to give you additional
Absolutely,
funding?
yeah. In part of it, we passed a bond. The voters passed a bond in early 2000s that built the fire station on Dinehard Lane, which opened in 2004. And that was on a 15-year bond, which just got paid off a couple of years ago. We've been working on a lot of different fronts with EMS and fire services delivery study for Valley County to really look at the whole system and what we could do to increase efficiencies. We're also currently working on an impact fee study with the city of McCall and Valley County to collect impact fees for the fire district, which can be used for capital improvements from growth. And so we're working on those different fronts to make sure those funding mechanisms are put in place and then figure out what we need to ask for from the voters.
So if you were to wave a magic wand over the fire department, what would be the best thing that could happen as far as something
That's a good
improves?
question. Ideally, for us, our fire station was built in 04, and it was really built at a time when we had a paid fire chief, a paid fire marshal, and an EMS director and a secretary. It was a volunteer station. It wasn't built for housing people full time. There was no dorm rooms built. The men's locker room has one toilet, one sink, and one shower. We use that space today. Typically, we have 4 people going off duty and 4 people coming on duty in the morning, and they're all using that bathroom, shower.
So there's a renovation that needs to happen on that
there's a
property.
renovation that definitely needs to take place before we can add more people to the mix responsibly. So our plan right now, working through the impact fee study, is to add on a second story to the station so we can increase staffing comfortably and safely. The next step will be hiring people. Ideally, to staff the station at this point in time, we really need to have 6 people minimum at the station, so we can have 4 people on the 2 people on an ambulance, and then we can throw 2 people from the engine onto a second ambulance and have an engine staffed and 2 ambulances staffed. To do that, we really need 7 people on each shift. We have 3 shifts that operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, so that we have the ability to have somebody on vacation time or sick time and still maintain that 6-person minimum.
Well, there's some serious needs there.
There are, and it's even difficult now. We try to maintain 4. We have a minimum manning requirement of 3 people, one of which is a paramedic. And so the only way to maintain 4 with 4 people on shift is to hold people over on overtime. And just we work them too much. Our firefighters, I think people don't typically understand this. People typically work a 40-hour work week. Through federal law, it's called the FLSA exemption, allows municipalities to work firefighters up to 53 hours a week without paying overtime. And so our firefighters, they're scheduled for a 56-hour work week. And at the end of the day, a year, they work a 53-hour work week on average. Because they do get an extra shift off every other 28 days, which happens 13 or 6.5 times a year to offset that overtime.
Every firefighter in our region is doing 53 hours a week on average.
Minimum. And I would say in McCall, on average, our guys and gals are averaging probably 65 or 70 hours a week because of overtime, which is particularly increases in summer months.
I've never seen this in the local media, so thank you for letting us
A lot
be
of
the first
people don't
to be
understand it.
really aware of that incredible staffing load.
Yeah,
that
they
you
work.
have to
They work
manage.
a lot.
Well, thank you. I'd like to take you back to one final issue for our newcomers, and that's wood stoves. What do our newcomers need to know about that key central heat for so many of our homes that is wood stoves?
Wood stoves can be an incredibly safe and efficient heat source. They can also be an incredibly dangerous heat source. My recommendation for anybody is to be really familiar with their wood stove. And if they're not familiar with it and they don't have proof of an inspection, that they reach out to get an inspection. In Idaho, you get a wood stove inspection through the Idaho State Building Safety. It's the HVAC, heating, ventilation, conditioning inspectors, and they inspect wood stoves, fireplace. And what they're typically looking for is that the appliance is UL listed and that it meets the specifications for that appliance. So one of the kind of myths I think that people think is that every wood stove has the same specifications for clearances from combustibles and from walls and flooring and all that kind of stuff. And it's just not the case. Each appliance is different. If it's been UL listed, it's tested by UL and studied for its particular characteristics. And so it's important to make sure that each device has been installed properly, meets the clearance specifications, has the right kind of chimney coming off of it. 20 years ago, we ran a lot of chimney fires in this area, particularly in the fall when people were firing them up. And a lot of it was old masonry chimneys that the mortar had just broken down from years of heat and moisture. And so particularly, I think we've gotten away from a lot of it as those systems have aged. People have put metal liners in those old chimneys, which is great. And a lot of the new construction, if they have wood stoves and fireplaces, are constructed properly and have been inspected appropriately. And so I would just urge people to make sure that their wood stove or their appliance is inspected by a state inspector, that they're familiar with operating it, and particularly if they're using it for their sole heat source, to only burn dry wood, and to have their chimney cleaned at least annually, if not more, if they're burning multiple cords of wood. Probably.
Thank you. That's really important too. So much part of our life here. Is there anything we've missed in this conversation that you'd like to add, or is there anything you'd like to sort of edit on the fly? This is live TV. Was there any part of our conversation that you'd like to make a minor adjustment with, or is there anything that you'd like to add at this point?
Yeah, I don't think so. Be safe, stay healthy, be nice, wave at people, and wave at our firefighters.
Well, you're summarizing that's really well, and I think a summary is really important. I think I'd like to summarize self-sufficiency is crucial. I just heard wave at the newcomers. Okay, there are some others in there. Let's repeat them.
Self-sufficiency. Carry a shovel in your car.
Yeah.
Wave at people.
Yeah.
Be nice.
Yeah.
Be safe. Be healthy. Wave at our firefighters.
Yes.
We've got some amazing.
And when those boots get down through the middle of town, it's a good time to pull out your wallet. And
yeah, and I should clarify. People think when they do that, we do fill the boot,
right,
that they're donating to the fire department. They're not. We raise money annually from the Muscular Dystrophy Association, and every dollar of that money we collect in the boot goes to the Muscular Dystrophy Association. We have an annual MDA camp at Quaker Hill in McCall, where kids from all over the state of Idaho with muscular dystrophy come, and that money stays pretty local, sends a lot of kids to camp.
Oh, that's
yeah.
Oh, thank you for what you're doing as the fire chief. I have had a wonderful relationship with you over the years. You have been a part of McCall College, and as we began our journey of providing higher education, So I want to thank you. And I'd like to congratulate you because this week you earned your master's. Take a minute and just tell us what that means to you and to you as a fire chief here in our community.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I got out of college and hadn't finished my associate's degree and got a job working. And one of the things on kind of my bucket list was always to get my bachelor's. I finished that in 2014, and I got it in fire service administration. But I waited until I had a family and a couple kids, and it became a whole lot more work. While I was doing that, I realized that I enjoyed writing particularly, and I've always been kind of an avid reader. And so a master's degree didn't seem that far off. I promised my wife at the time, after I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I'd wait at least a year or two before I jumped into another program. And so I did. I waited a while. I felt fortunate. I kind of signed up for a program that I'd been looking at for a couple years, and I don't even think I explained it to my wife before I turned in my application. An acceptance letter. But it worked out good because I started in 2020, which was the year of COVID, right? And 2021, which was a stressful time at work for us, but at the same time, I felt like it kind of gave me an out and kind of centered me on my studies and gave me something else to think of. And I did it in organizational leadership, so it just helped me in my mind kind of consolidate all of my experiences and all the things I've read and kind of just consolidate it myself so that I can serve McCall better and serve my family better. And
thank you for succeeding. And I won't ask you if a doctorate is in the wind because your wife might be watching.
yeah,
And we wouldn't want to
we'll
surprise
talk
her as
about
well.
that off the air.
But congratulations on your successes, both locally and educationally.
Thank you.
That is a great honor. And so thank you for your time. It's so valuable. And you didn't have a call out. I don't know if you turned yourself off the system, but I'm thankful that you didn't get a call out in the middle of this. But thank you for always being ready to help the residents call.
Absolutely.
And the newcomers will know that they've got someone who's got their back. And that's so important. So thank you, Chief Garrett, for being with us tonight.
Well, thank you for watching our community college community conversation, our McCall College community conversation on discovering McCall and helping newcomers succeed. I really think we've given you some information today on helping you be successful in the fire situations that are all around us. And so I so appreciate our conversation. This series is sponsored by a grant from the Idaho Community Foundation's Shelton Foundation that works to support Valley County. And we thank them for their assistance to make sure these conversations continue. This conversation and all of our conversations are being recorded, and they'll be on our McCall College site, and that'll be available to you at youtube.com/McCall College. And so you'll be able to see those and share those. We won't be having a conversation next week, but in 2 weeks, that's May 26th at 7 p.m., we'll talk to Superintendent Eric Pingree. And Eric is our McCall Donley School District Superintendent. And so we're really excited to have an opportunity of talking to him about the topic of succeeding in public education. I know you'll want to see that conversation as well. Please invite your friends and especially any newcomers to watch. Until next week, discover more about McCall and the wonderful West Central Mountains. I'm Dr. Bryan Williams, president of McCall College. Thank you for watching.